Thanks, Christian. Sir Robin does send his apologies. As Christian says, he has an extraordinary track record of turning around failing schools in some of the poorest parts of London. And today, Ofsted has appeared at one of his primary schools, so he's understandably chosen to be there. Education lies very close at the heart of what we believe in at the CSJ. Because education has the power to transform, the power to offer new opportunities, the power to help children shrug off the disadvantages that life has heaped upon them. And this is, as you will know, a very exciting time for education. The sector is currently experiencing some of the most dramatic reforms that it's witnessed since the 1940s. The huge increase in the number of academies, the end to bureaucratic overload from central government, creation of a pupil premium to make sure that additional money goes to pupils who have come from the poorest backgrounds. A fresh emphasis on discipline and rigour in schools, and the opportunities for charities, teachers and parents to open their own schools. These are reforms which, broadly speaking, we strongly agree with, and not just because we recommended them in 2007, but because they are the first vital steps to making sure that everyone, every young person, gets the opportunities that they deserve at school, particularly the poorest children. As you all know, the pressures of financial poverty can and often do drive educational failure. If you're eligible for free school meals, you are 5 times more likely to fail at school than your peers. But financial poverty is not the only driver to educational failure. Yet, if of the 236,000 pupils that finished their GCSEs last year without hitting the floor target, without getting 5A star to C, nearly 80% of those children were not on free school meals. Income is not the only factor here. We desperately want to close the gap between the richest and the poorest, but we must also ask what the prospects are like for the 1 in 5 children who leave school having failed both English and Maths GCSE. We have to ask what the outlook is for the next generation when there are still over 2,000 secondary schools where 1 in 10 children doesn't pass a single GCSE, when there are still schools where more than 30% of the pupils are classed as persistent absentees. Because we know that educational failure can lead to poverty. Indeed, we would argue that to a certain extent educational failure is poverty. 2/3 of employers believe that schools don't equip young people with the practical skills they need for employment. Nearly 3/4 of young offenders would classify their academic achievements as nil. And well over half the prison population lacks even basic literacy. Education can and does make a difference. You only need to look at schools like Burlington Danes on the White City Estate in London, headed by Sally Coates, who we're very pleased to say is on our working group, where almost all of the pupils now go on to higher education, despite the fact that more than 50% of the school is eligible for free school meals. It's examples like these, and examples like others found and represented by the expertise on our working group that have focused our attention for Breakthrough Britain too. All the academic research shows that the most important factor in determining how well children do at school is the quality of teaching. Some of you might ask why we needed academic research to tell us that. But that's why we'll be asking what can be done to improve the quality of teaching in those schools and parts of the country where reform has yet to reach. We'll also be looking at transitions within education, and more can be done to ensure that those young children who start school at the age of 4, many cases in nappies, many cases unable to speak, how those children can be found earlier by the system, how we can make sure that more of them are school ready, how we can close that gap, try and close that gap before it begins. How more can be done to help children make that difficult transition from primary to secondary school, a transition that we know at the moment sees to the undoing of a lot of good work that's being done at primary. And perhaps most importantly of all, how we can help young people make the transition from secondary school to work. The majority of children in the education system still don't go to university, and yet for the past 30 years the education system has been squarely based around judging secondary schools on how many children they are getting in to higher education. We need to look at the majority who are going to go into work and how we can help them get there. And because this is the CSJ, we also want to look beyond confines of school gates. Often when children fail badly at school, it's not a mere sign of naughtiness or disinterest. It's a sign that something isn't right at home. So we'll be asking what more can be done to help families help their children. What can be done to provide that wraparound care with vulnerable families that might sometimes involve educating parents as well as children. This is an extremely exciting piece of work, and as Christian said, we'd really like it if you were all involved with it as well. So please feel free to come forward and make submissions to the working group. Thanks very much.